So while we're still in the title process, I'm going to go through the life of a title file. All right. So the whole gist of buying a property is, well, yes, the seller wants to sell their property and, make money from it. The buyer too wants to buy a home or wants to buy an investment. However, very important, the seller has to provide marketable title to the buyer. So that means that whatever we're doing, whatever contracts we're entering into, whatever, searches that we're doing, if that title is not marketable, then we don't have a closing. So a marketable title at the end of the day is a title that's free and clear of all kinds of issues, all encumbrances, all issues. And again, that's one of the jobs that the title company does, is to make sure that at the time that we're at the table, the buyer is being presented with marketable title. Okay, so obviously, when we're trying to figure out whether a property has marketable title, we may come across certain issues. We may come across prior owner judgments. We may come across missing interest. We may come across wrong, like names that are misspelled. We may come across like state tax liens, federal tax liens. There are different things that we may come across when we're looking through the title. And this is where your title policy comes into play. So if you have a seller has a title policy, and then there's one of these issues that I just mentioned that, rears its head, all that seller needs to do, or may not even be aware there are any issues. The seller will probably just get a call from the title company saying, hey, well, do you have a title policy? And they say, yeah, sure, I do have a title policy. Can you provide it to us? Yeah, sure, here you go. And that's all that they probably will know. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's so many title issues, but it's being worked out because that seller has a title policy. Agreed, there are some issues that are not workable at that point. For instance, if there is a missing interest in the chain. There are some times where there is a missing interest and we can't close. We can't use a title policy to, a seller's title policy to try to, write over the issue. It will have to be dealt with at that particular time. But most situations are able to be dealt with if that seller has a title policy. Right. So as we were talking about earlier on, the whole purpose of doing a closing is to make sure that the buyer receives marketable title to the property. How is this process memorialized? It's through a deed. And I'm pretty sure you all have seen, like, it's usually kind of fancy looking, but basically the deed should just tells you who the seller is, who the buyer is. So the seller is the grantor, the buyer is the grantee. It will tell you what property is being transferred. It's very important that a deed states the property, that's being the legal description of that property, because again, without that, where is the transfer? How do we know what has been transferred? It's very, very important as well. When I'm at the table, I always tell the buyers and the sellers, look at the names, because that happens a lot. It probably happens more often than you realize, where the names are either misspelled or the names are wrong, or we have sellers who change their names. I had one name, and between the time that they bought the property and they're selling the property, they've changed their names. So we all look at that information. We always tell the clients at the table, look at the information to make sure that it's correct. It always has to have the legal description of the property in there. And it always has to have the seller's signature, okay? Questions about deed? The other document that's very important, if there is a loan, is the mortgage. The mortgage basically is the lender's security. It's evidence of the lender's security interest in the property. And it basically just tells the world that, hey, well, this property has a lien on it, and it's by way of a lien, a mortgage. It says, well, everyone, you got to know the buyers got a mortgage to purchase the property. This mortgage is known as the lender's security interest. Security instrument, sorry. So with the mortgage, it will have the buyer's names, it will have the lender's names. There's certain, depending on the state, you have the lender being represented by a trustee that has to be listed in the mortgage documents. So in states like Maryland, for instance, it's called a deed of trust, and then there's a trustee that's representing the lender. In other states, it's just a mortgage. So it definitely has to have the buyer's names, all the buyers. So it doesn't matter. There's sometimes that you might have 2, 3 buyers, but there's just one buyer who's getting a loan on the property. And I get asked this question all the time, like, well, yeah, she's not on the loan. He's not on the loan. Why is he why do they have to sign these documents? Because the lender does not want an instance where 10 years from now, the mortgage has not been paid and they're trying to foreclose on the property, or they're trying to get their money, and then person B that wasn't on the mortgage comes and says, well, I didn't know that person A took a loan on this property. I wasn't aware. So they want every person who owns that property to sign that document evidencing the loan. Basically, you're saying that we are aware that there is a loan on this property and we're okay with it, okay? All right, so at the time a mortgage, you might see this, you've seen it several times. One of the things that the title company has to do is pay off the seller's loan. So at the time that we pay off the seller's loan, there is a document that the lender is required to record in the county. The document basically just tells everyone, hey, the mortgage on this property has been paid off. The seller no longer owes anything on this property. This property is free and clear as it pertains to this particular mortgage. So the lender goes into the county and records this document. It's called a release or a certificate of satisfaction, basically saying that this loan has been satisfied or the loan has been paid off. All right, questions? So, yes.
Super simple. Where does the lender file this satisfaction of mortgage?
In the county. In the county where the property is located. Great question. So it's a great question because this can also be a source of a title issue. Now we have sellers where we have the contract, we get our abstract in, and the title is showing that there is a mortgage on this property, but the seller is saying, well, that mortgage has been paid off. It's been long since been paid off. Now, and it has happened before where the lender recorded the release in the wrong county. That's not going to work because that doesn't show that that property has been paid off. The mortgage on that property has been paid off. So if, as I said, once the loan has been paid off and the lender has to record a release, it has to be in the county where that property is located. Okay.